After transforming into a half-human, half-dragon form, the dragon girl charged at Alechania with tremendous speed. However, Alechania scoffed at the attack, calmly standing her ground. With a swift motion, she unleashed a powerful advanced skill. The dragon girl, unable to dodge, endured the excruciating pain as Alechania reveled in her howls of agony. But Alechania's delight was short-lived. Although the dragon girl seemed defeated, Alechania was now worried about low.Later and whether he could handle the remaining dragons and goblins. Her question was quickly answered by a resounding explosion, confirming that low.Later was struggling to manage the chaos. The wounded dragon girl saw an opportunity in Alechania's momentary distraction. Taking advantage of the chaos, she transformed back into her full dragon form and escaped before Alechania could react. As she fled, the dragon girl vowed to return and exact her revenge on Alechania once she recovered from her injuries. Alechania was enraged, but she couldn't pursue the dragon. She needed to protect the villagers. Swearing vengeance, she vowed to find Dragon Island and wipe out every dragon there. Later, peace returned to the town. Alechania had dealt with the remaining dragons and goblins, but she was furious at low.Later and his group's incompetence. They couldn't even defeat the goblins. As Alechania entered the town center, a knight informed her that low.Later and Ifra had been captured by goblins. Alechania was stunned. Everyone on the continent knew goblins were the weakest of creatures. How could low.Later and his team be overpowered? Looking at the bodies of the fallen knights, Alechania felt a surge of anxiety. She was then informed that these goblins were very unusual. Their strength was comparable to that of a large monster, and even low.Later couldn't overcome them. Hearing this, Alechania exploded in anger, declaring she would wipe out every goblin tribe in the nearby forest as revenge. But a villager stopped her, pleading for her to stay and protect the town. They feared the dragons and goblins would return, leaving them defenseless. The villagers around Alechania knelt, pleading with her to stay. They were the people of the temple and the empire, and they looked to her for protection. Despite her rage, Alechania understood that the lives of these villagers were more important than the captured knight. Her duty was to protect them. She blamed low.Later for his weakness, for failing to even defeat goblins. The only thing she could do was send a message to the capital, requesting assistance. Meanwhile, Lim Tian had returned to his tribe, greeted with cheers and celebrations for his victory. He had brought back 2 humans, low.Later and Ifra, as trophies. Upon arriving at the camp, the goblins placed low.Later and Ifra under guard at the base of a large tree, warning them to behave or risk being eaten. As low.Later surveyed the scene, he was shocked to see that the goblin tribe was holding many elves captive, which explained their unusual strength. Ifra was worried, thinking that some goblins in this tribe might be at a hero's level. Low.Later understood the severity of their situation and asked Ifra if her powers had returned. She gave him good news. At her current rate of recovery, she would soon be able to use magic again. However, their conversation was overheard by Lim Tian, who commended Ifra on her impressive healing speed. Ifra was startled by Lim Tian's sudden appearance, especially because he knew her name. Before she could fully recover from her shock, Lim Tian seized her and grabbed her legs while Ifra asked him what he was going to do. Lim Tian answered with a chilling smile, then used his claws to dig deep into Ifra's flesh, causing her to cry out in pain. Witnessing this, low.Later shouted in anger, calling Lim Tian a monster and demanding that he stop. Before the commotion could escalate further, a goblin intervened with a powerful punch, enraged that low.Later had dared to insult their leader. Low.Later refrained from further insults but glared at Lim Tian, questioning whether he was an intelligent goblin and if he had considered the consequences of kidnapping them. Low.Later informed him that his master was a sword saint, capable of wiping out the entire tribe. Lim Tian smirked, stating that the woman was also his prey, but the time wasn't right yet. Before departing, he ordered the goblins to erase all traces of their presence, so that the woman would want to find them, but could not. Wiping the blood from his hands, Lamthian instructed a goblin to lead all the second-generation goblins into the forest to hunt as many monsters as they could. The goblin hurriedly obeyed, while Lamthian knew this event was significant and that the humans would not let it go. His immediate concern was to strengthen his tribe before the inevitable human retaliation. Setting that aside for the moment, it was time for revenge. Lamthian stepped on low.Later, demanding he answer his questions honestly. If low.Later lied, Lamthian would cut off a part of his body. Lamthian's first question was, "You humans enjoy secretly imprisoning and torturing goblins, don't you?" Low.Later was taken aback. Although there was truth to the accusation, he feigned ignorance. His deception came at a price. Without mercy, Lamthian cut off one of low.Later's ears. Low.Later writhed on the ground in agony, cursing Lamthian as he insisted that everything he did was for the protection of humans, that it was his duty to eliminate monsters. Lamthian found this claim repulsive. He believed low.Later was driven by the desire to elevate the status of his knightly order. Lamthian knew they chose to kill monsters, including humans, who were captured by them, because killing was easier than saving. To fulfill their duty, they had killed countless people, making them more monstrous than the monsters themselves. These words shocked low.Later and Ifra. They couldn't understand how the goblin knew this. But Lamthian ended the conversation, declaring that he wasn't like them. He didn't need to prove he was good because he was inherently a cruel monster. Now, he would embrace that role to teach them a lesson. Ifra had been paralyzed by the goblin's poison. Her consciousness was fading, and she would be Lamthian's next target for revenge. Low.Later knew what was coming. Despite being beaten by the goblins, he struggled and cried out, begging Lamthian not to harm Ifra. But Lamthian had no mercy for his enemies. He promised to make Ifra suffer for all the pain he had endured, and this was just the beginning. He grabbed Ifra, turning to low.Later and telling him to open his eyes and enjoy the show. His goblins would serve Ifra with all their heart. Low.Later was horrified by what was happening before him. A day passed after that event, and the goblin guards continued to change shifts. We see a goblin exit the tent, looking satisfied after torturing Ifra. Another goblin watches him with concern, reminding him that the chieftain ordered Ifra not to be killed. The smug goblin replies that she is still very much alive. Ifra's clothes are now in tatters. She no longer screams as she did when the torture began, but her silence is even more terrifying. Low.Later is forced to witness everything. He looks at Ifra with worry, urging her to stay strong and not give up, assuring her they will be rescued soon. Ifra just whispers that she understands. Low.Later's attempt to comfort her earns him a beating from another goblin for speaking out of turn. As Low.Later is silenced, yet another goblin approaches to continue Ifra's torture. Inside the tent, the Elf Queen and Kasana tend to the children, silently watching the horror unfold. Seeing Ifra's torment, the Elf Queen concludes that Lamthian has a deep vendetta against humans. Kasana is terrified, thinking they are in an even worse situation than the two humans. At least they have fruit to eat. It seems both the Elf Queen and Kasana are pregnant with Lamthian's children. Gobu arrives at that moment and confirms that Lamthian indeed harbors a grudge against humans, specifically blaming these two for it. The Elf Queen, seemingly having changed her opinion of Lamthian, remarks that he is the most unique goblin she has ever seen, a goblin driven by revenge, capable of anything. Even while he tortured her with his weapon, she felt a strange fondness for him. Kasana, standing beside her, senses her mother is almost happy about being tortured by Lamthian. Meanwhile, back with Lamthian, a goblin rushes in to inform him that the second-generation goblins have returned. Hearing this, Lamthian was surprised, cause it said that the second-generation goblins returned with their loot of various monsters, greeted by enthusiastic cheers from the other goblins. After all, besides reproduction, their main interest was meat. Upon seeing Lamthian, a large goblin immediately greeted him. This goblin was level 33 with the profession of warrior, holding titles such as Son of Elf, Blessed by the Lord, and Monster Hunter. He boasted 470 horsepower, 142 strength, 168 defense, and numerous skills, giving him an overall power level of 500. Lim Tian was pleased with the second-generation goblins. They had evolved into large goblins after surpassing level 30, and their strength was beginning to catch up to his own. Lim Tian asked why they returned so early and if the hunt had been successful. The goblin reported that they had hunted all the nearby monsters and had to venture further west into the forest. However, they encountered a tribe of giant goblins, slaughtering smaller goblin tribes. This news surprised Lim Tian. It was the first time he had heard of a giant goblin race. Until now, he had only known of demi-humans as the closest creatures to goblins in size. Another goblin informed Lim Tian about this tribe, known as the Bloodtooth tribe. All its members were giant goblins. In a previous hunt, he had discovered a smaller tribe being attacked by these giants, and the scene was terrifying. Thinking about these giant goblins, Lim Tian didn't feel worried. He felt excited. If he could capture their chieftain and create a third generation of goblins, they would have enough power to resist a human invasion. Hearing Lim Tian's words, Loader laughed mockingly and told Lim Tian to keep dreaming because his death was approaching. He said that even if goblins became strong, knights would still defeat them. Lim Tian glared at Loader with a terrifying intensity, thanking him for the reminder and admitting he had almost forgotten Loader was there. As a reward for his insolence, Lim Tian allowed the other goblins to play with Loader, instructing them not to kill him. The goblins pounced on Loader with ravenous enthusiasm. It seemed they found humans strangely alluring, even men. While the goblins indulged themselves, Loader screamed in desperation, cursing and threatening them. He shouted that humans would come and destroy their wretched tribe. Ephra remained silent, her head bowed as she watched everything unfold. Perhaps she had learned that staying quiet was her best option. Hours later, Loader lay unconscious on the ground, his face a grim mask of the pain he had endured. Meanwhile, the goblin tribe celebrated with a feast of alcohol and meat. It seemed everyone was happy, everyone except Loader and Ephra. Gobu approached Lim Tian to ask about his plans to attack the Bloodtooth tribe. Lim Tian confirmed the plan, stating that if they wanted to survive, they needed to become the strongest. He aimed not only to attack the tribe, but also to capture their chieftain. Lim Tian then announced that he had decided on a name for their tribe. From now on, they would be called the Tribe of Frenzy. The name seemed to suit the goblins' wild nature, and they roared with joy at finally having a formal name. Despite the celebration, Gobu felt apprehensive about Lim Tian's decision. She warned him that the Bloodtooth goblins were very strong and had destroyed many other tribes. Attacking them and capturing their chieftain would be a daunting task. Lim Tian, however, remained confident, telling Gobu not to worry. He knew their current strength well. He glanced at Ephra as if he had an idea of how to use her in the upcoming conflict. Before launching the attack, Lim Tian decided to gather information about the Bloodtooth tribe. He chose a vantage point where he could observe the entire area, curious about the strength of these giant goblins. The Bloodtooth tribe's settlement featured houses with modern architecture, suggesting a level of intelligence he hadn't expected. Inside, many giant goblins were eating and drinking, but Lim Tian felt confident he could defeat them. As he observed, Lim Tian noticed fear in the eyes of the goblins inside the houses. They seemed terrified of their own chieftain. The chieftain was a massive goblin, far larger than the others. He was level 50, with the profession of high-level warrior, and held titles like Monster Hunter, Goblin Hero, and Breeding Machine. With 700 horsepower, 239 strength, 140 defense, and armed with a bone hammer, his overall power reached 900. Lim Tian had not expected to encounter such a formidable goblin, and was both surprised and thrilled by this. So, this is the end of the video. I hope you enjoyed watching it. Don't forget to leave your comments below. Your opinions are valuable. Goodbye, and see you in the next chapter.